Hello, welcome back. Today I'm going to show you how to make a basic bodice pattern with side darts. So I have Seamly 2D open. We are going to create a measurements file to begin. So hit measurements and open Seamly Me. You'll hit new. I'll hit open individual because I've already created the file. And this is a basic bodice. Okay. So I have created a chart with all of the measurements that you need. There are quite a few for this. There's 42 measurements you're going to need to take. So if you hit add known, these are the letters. You can close these out or open them. But here are which measurements you need to take based off of the letters with their correlating numbers. Now, if you want to move any of your measurements around once you get them in here, you can just grab it, and these arrows right here will allow you to move the position of them. If it makes it different organized, if that's easier for you, go ahead. But otherwise, just click on each measurement and add your number in down here where it says formula. Now, some of these will actually put the number in for you. So for instance, when we take the high hip circumference and then the high hip front arc, this will do the math for us to figure out what's left, which is the back arc. And that's a few times in there, so there's a few of these that you don't actually have to put in. But go ahead and put all of your measurements in, and then we'll say File, Save, and we will call this, I don't want caps lock, Basic Bodice with Side Dart. And then just hit Save. And then I can exit out of this. Now we need to create a new pattern, so I will hit New, and I'm going to hit the X. We'll call this bodice front. Mine's in inches because I use inches, okay? And then go to measurements, and I want to load individual, the measurements file we just created. So this is going to be basic bodice with side dart, open. So now those measurements are in this pattern. And then I'm just going to go ahead and save this whole pattern. And I want to call it the exact same thing that I called my measurements file so that I can put them together and find them accurately. So basic bodice with side dart. Save. Let's begin with the actual pattern now. So I'm going to grab the point at distance and angle, this first tool. We always start on the red circle, so go ahead and click that. Come to the right and click again. For the length, don't worry about any of these numbers. Click on f of x, delete that, and go ahead and just type in waist in here. We have 42 measurements, so it's going to take me a long time to scroll through and find things. But if I type in waist, it'll only show up with things from the waist, which unfortunately is still quite a few, but it's a lot less than it was. We need the waist arc front, because right now we're working on our front bodice, but we're starting at the center of our body and working out, so we need half of this. So if you double click this, it shows up here, and then divided by 2, hit OK. The angled, you can highlight that and then just type 0. OK. I'm going to hit Zoom Fit Best. Now, there's going to be a lot of points going on in here, and I don't want to get too confused. So I'm going to click on this A1. My tool options are here on the right. If this is not showing up, you need to click on Measurements, Pattern Piece, sorry. Click on Pattern Piece, and make sure Tool Options has a check. If that's not on, make sure you turn that on. Alright, so instead of being called A1 right here, click that X. We're going to call this waist. Or you could call it front waist, but I'm just going to call it waist. So now on our pattern, it actually says waist there for us, so it gets a little less confusing once we get a lot of points going on. Okay, next we're going to go to the below bust. So grab that same tool, click on point A, click above it. The length this time, hit F of X, delete that, and I'm going to type bust, and I need waist to below bust. Here we go. Low bust to waist front. Double click that, hit OK. Our angle is 90 degrees. OK. Now we are going to come to the right to the below bust circumference. So grab the same tool, click A1, come to the right, delete the length. I'm going to type in bust again. Now we need the low bust arc in the front. So click that, and again we need to divide that by 2. Hit OK. Our angle is 0. OK. Alright, and then I am going to rename this by clicking on the X again. And we will call this B bust for below bust. Okay, so if I click enter, that will show up. Alright, our next one we are going to go up to the bust measurement. So grab that same point, grab point A, click on that, click straight up again. Our angle needs to be 90. We can actually put the names in here, by the way, if you want to do it while you're working on it. If you remember, I usually just do it afterwards, but if you want to, you can do it before. Alright, for the length, hit F of X, delete those numbers, and we are going to the bust this time, so we need waist to bust. Let's search through this a second. Bust to waist front, there we go. Double click that, hit OK, and there we go. Now we're going to come to the right to the bust circumference, same point, click on our bust height, go to the right, the angle needs to be 0. The length, we can delete that. Again, I'm just going to type in bust, and this time we need the bust arc front divided by 2. Okay, and then just hit OK. If you want to change this point level to bust now, you can. I'm going to hit OK. We're going to do the same thing for the above bust or armpit measurement. Grab that same tool, click on the waist, click up. The angle needs to be 90. The length, we're going to do bust, and this is the high bust. So waist to high bust front. High bust to waist front is what we're looking for. Okay, okay. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to bring it to the right for our circumference. Length. Let's see if we type high bust. There we go. High bust arc front divided by 2. Okay, the angle is 0. And our point label, delete that. We will call this, you can put H bust. I usually put A bust because I remember it as above bust, but either one is fine. Hit OK. Alright. Continuing to work upward and outward, grab that same point, start at the waist, go up 90 degrees. Our length, we are now going up to the neck, so I'm just going to type in neck. And this should be waist to neck. So neck front to waist front. You don't want the side, the front. And hit OK. And actually, let's call that neck instead of A4. We will say neck. Okay. I'm going to zoom fit best on this so I can see a little bit more. Now I need to come to the right, the width of our neck, half of it. Same point. Click on the neck. Click to the right. Angle is 0. F of X, get rid of that. I'm going to type in neck again. So this is our neck width divided by 2. Hit OK. OK. Now this next point will be just a little different. I want to square this off from the waist because I measured from the waist straight up to the shoulder, not from the center over. So we're going to grab this point and we're going to use this squaring off tool, point from X and Y, click on that. So this line is how far out. So we need this to line with A4 or next to the neck. And then this line is like how tall we want it to be. So we want this to be lined up with the waist. Okay, because I need this point at the waist to go up to the next side height. So now grab this other point again, that first tool, point at distance and angle. Click this from the waist, the neck width from the waist, and go straight up. Our angle is going to be 90. The length, go ahead and delete that. Type in neck. We need the waist front to neck side. Double click that and hit OK, OK. And there our pattern now goes up to our neck side from the waist where we measured it so that our measurement is accurate. So now we need to get our shoulder. So we're going to do this a little bit similarly, that we are going to grab this tool, the second one, which is a point along a line, and down here at the waist, starting at the side of the neck, and then clicking on the waist. You have to go this direction, by the way. Make sure you start at the side of the neck and go over to the waist. Our length, hit f of x, and this needs to be our shoulder measurement. So type in shoulder. So shoulder length, hit OK. And even if it's longer than this, that's okay. I'm just going to hit OK. So mine's actually longer. It sticks out further than the waist, which will be the case for a lot of people, but it still just pushes it out further. I like to do it this way because that way there's not one more line making me confused that maybe this is the waist out here. I like to do it just to the point. It keeps things just a touch cleaner. Okay, so now from this, which is our shoulder length, we measured from, we need to go from that up to the height of the shoulder, and then we'll connect those. So grab this point at distance and angle and start at that shoulder down here, come straight up 90 degrees. For the length, we're going to type in shoulder. So we need the shoulder tip to waist side front. Okay? Okay? So that is my shoulder line. This might look really severe on some people. It might look almost straight across on some people. It's okay for this to look weird. You have to remember that this is kind of wrapping around a lot of different things on your body to make these measurements work. And this will actually end up a little bit higher once we get the dart in as well. So even if it looks weird, just trust the process. Okay. Next we are going to work our way down to the high hip. And that we're not going to do a ton with, but I like to have the measurement on here for future patterns. Again, this is a basic bodice that we're going to create other patterns off of. So grab this first tool, start from the waist, come straight down. Your angle is 270 degrees. The length, we need the waist to the high hip. So I'm going to type in high, waist to high hip front. Okay? Okay? And then I'm going to do the circumference. So click on that. Oop, there we go. Drag to the right. Angle is 0. The length, I'm going to type in high hip. Alright, so I need the high hip arc front divided by 2. Okay? Okay. The next thing we'll add in is the apex on the bust. So this is going to be on the bust line, so from A2 to the bust, and we're going to grab that point at distance along line. We're going to start at A2 and come out to the bust, and the length of this, when we measured bust point to bust point, here we go, bust point to bust point, divided by 2. And then hit OK, and that is our apex. So I'm actually going to relabel that apex. Okay. Now, to do darts off of an apex, you don't want to do it straight from the apex. You want to go about 3/4 of an inch to an inch off of the apex. So I'm going to grab that same tool, starting at the apex, going to the bust. I'm just going to go 3/4 of an inch. If you are very, very busty, you probably want to do an inch. If you are very, 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 very small, you could maybe do 1/2 inch, but really 3/4 of an inch is going to be the most comfortable at that point. Okay, so this is the point we'll actually draw our dart off of. Now, we need to find the difference between our below bust and the bust. The other lines we can curve out and connect on the side, but these two are the biggest difference that we need the dart specifically for. So we are going to square those off. So grab this squaring off tool again, point of X and Y. We're going to go as far out as the bust, click on that, and then we're going to come down to the below bust. And I'm just going to move these points a little so I can continue seeing what's going on. Then I need to connect the below bust to this new squared off point so that I know, I'm going to zoom on this so you can see it a little better. I need to know how much wider the bust here is than the below bust. So click on line and just connect those. Now I need a line to create this dart off of, so go down to line, and we're going to connect those 2 points, line between points, and go from waist up to bust. And and that will be the line that we draw the dart off of. So I need to find this point where those two cross. So I'm going to grab this tool right here, and I'm just going to go waist to bust and then below bust over to A12, and that'll give me a point right in the center to work off of. Okay, I'm just going to move these a little bit so I can see what I'm doing still. Go back up to line, and we're going to go a point at distance across the line. Start at that intersection dot we just made and go up to the bust. Now this is going to be the difference between the bust and the below bust measurement, this B bust to A12. So f of x, length of line, B bust to A12. Double click that, but I only want half of that difference because I'm going to go half up, half down. So divided by 2. And then hit OK. OK, and now that's one of our points for the dart. I'm going to do the same thing the other direction, point along a line, start at the intersection, come down to the waist. This one I'm going to do slightly differently so that I can adjust how far up or down this dart is on this line. Hit f of x. I still want below bust to A12, so length of line, B bust to A12. But instead of dividing by 2, I'm just going to subtract A13 to A14. So A13 to A14. And hit OK, OK. That way, if I ever decide that instead of divided by 2, maybe I want only a third of it above, the whole dart will move, including the bottom of that. It makes it easier to adjust the pattern for later use. Okay, so these are the points we need for our darts. Now, if this is all getting confusing, what I like to do is grab a point that I don't need anymore and drag it on top of another point that I don't need anymore and just stack up the numbers for points I'm not using. Okay, so now we need to go into operations down here, operations. And this is what we're going to use to draw our dart. This is the dart tool. It's true darts, which means it's going to add any length we need to keep our width where we want our width. So grab true darts. The way this goes, we do our outside and then walk through the dart. So waist, bust. The first point on the dart closest to the waist, click there. Click where we want the dart to end, which is this point away from the apex, and then the outside of the dart, so the point closer to the bust. And it creates a true dart for us. So now I'm going to grab those points and drag them out a little bit just so I can see what's going on. Now, like I said a second ago, it starts to get confusing. So these 2 points that we made the dart off of, I don't need those anymore. So I'm going to grab those and put them in my pile of numbers that I don't want to look at anymore. Okay, this is the point that makes our actual dart for us. So now I'm going to draw a line and connect those just so I can see it better. So go to line, grab the line between points, and I'm going to go down from the bust to A17. From the bust, I will go from the waist up to A16, and then I will also draw out this apex point. So at A11, come out to both of those points. And that way I can actually see the dart even when I'm not clicking on the dart. That way visually I have a better understanding of what's actually going on in the pattern. Now we need to figure out how far up the side actually needs to go based off our side measurement, because remember all this kind of curves down over us. So we measured straight across at this above bust, and up to the above bust on our center, but now on the side here we need to know how high it goes up, because those are typically not the same. So grab this point, and to do that we're actually going to start at the bust, because this is some weird measurements going on, that there's a big gap here. So start at the bust and go straight up 90 degrees. Now I'm going to move this to the side so I can see all these points. For the length, hit f of x, delete that. Okay, and I want the side, so my armpit to side waist. But since I started at the bust, I need to subtract the length of these dart sides, so minus, and then length of line, and let's type in bust. Actually, that's a lot showing up. This bottom point is A17, so I'm just going to type in A17. There we go, A17 to bust, minus, we need the bottom part of it too, which starts at A16, so we'll type in A16 to the waist, hit OK, OK. And that is how high the armpit actually sits from our side measurement. If it's helpful, you can relabel this as armpit if you need that when you're looking at the curves and working on all of that. Now, since we subtracted a lot of space in here, if we sew this together, we're losing all that space. We need to add that space because it falls on the shoulder line. We need to add this at the shoulder so it doesn't pull at the shoulder. So the easiest way that I do this is this distance line in here. If we just connect A16 to A17, that will give us a close enough measurement of what that gap is that we're taking out. So hit line, connect A16 to A17, and then go back to point at distance and angle, grab that shoulder, come straight up, 90 degrees. For the length, delete that. We need length of line, and we just want 16 to 17. So I'm going to type in A16, 16 to 17. Okay, okay. So that is the height that we actually need the shoulder to sit at. So now we're going to connect the two of these with this line between 2 points. Now, because this is on an angle, this is probably longer than what your actual shoulder measurement is. So go back to point. We're just truing all of our distances at this point. So point at distance along 9. Start at the neck, go down to the shoulder height that we decided, f of x, and I want my shoulder length. Okay, okay, and yeah, look at that. It's not a huge difference, but it is a difference, and it makes a difference when you're working on your pattern. So now I am going to relabel that shoulder. Alright, we're going to start working on the armhole now. So between the above bust and neck, I'm going to grab this tool down all the way at the bottom and point, which is the midway or halfway between 2 points. Starting at the above bust, A3, going up to the neck, and then just hit OK. We are going to get our across the chest measurement. Grab this point at distance and angle, so start at that, come to the right. Angle is 0. The length, delete that, and it's my first one, across chest front. But it's only half, remember, so divided by 2. Okay, okay, alright, and this is across the chest. So our armhole curve needs to come through this point. So the first thing we're going to do is connect the shoulder to this point. So line, shoulder, to that point. It is important that we go in that order. Okay, so now the shoulder, this will actually just come straight down like that to make our curve. So now we need to connect this further down to this point so we have some points to create our curve off of. So go back to point. We are going to grab point, intersect, line, and axis. Alright, so point, intersect, line, and axis. Line. Point, intersect, line, and axis. Okay, so we're going to start over here at the above bust point. Go over to the above bust, and then click on this bottom point. Now this is just going to go wherever, and it doesn't really matter. Just click somewhere. For your formula on the angle over here, delete that and hit f of x. And we want the angle of the shoulder to A20. So angle of line, shoulder to A20. Okay, and now this is like a perfect angle down to where this is hitting. Alright, now I'm going to square off that point with down here. So grab our square off tool, grab that, and I want to square this off to that point. And now we need a point off of here for the curve as well. So I'm going to grab this this halfway point. What is that actually called? Midpoint between 2 points. Start at A20, down to A21. Instead of divided by 2, delete that and put divided by 4. Okay. Alright, we're going to create the curve now. So hit curve, this 4-point curve tool. Start at A20, this intersection. Come down to that 1 point. come down to this next point that we squared it off with, and then go down to the armpit. And that gives us a really nice armhole curve. If you need this to be deeper, you can make this divided by 3 or divided in half, or instead of squaring this off of the above bust, you could square it off of the actual armpit, and that'll lower it just a smidgen as well. But this is where mine comfortably sits. Again, the beautiful thing about this software is that if you want to adjust something, it is just little things that you can click and type in a new measurement instead of redrawing an entire pattern. Alright, I'm going to hit save. At this point, your front bodice is basically done. I am not going to connect this lower waistline for this. I just want it in here for patterns that I actually end up making on this. The only last thing we need to do is the neckline, which sometimes I connect, sometimes I just leave it. Again, this is to make other patterns off of. If you want a curved neckline, just a really simple one, grab this midpoint between 2 points, start at A4, go over to the neck. Instead of divided by 2, I'm going to multiply it by 0.6. Okay, I don't know why that number just seems to make a nice curve for me. Go into the curve, grab your curve tool, start at the neck, over, up, and there is a nice little neck curve for you. Hit save, and we will go ahead and move on to the bodice back at this point. So we're going to hit new pattern piece. It's a completely new pattern, and we're going to say bodice back. Okay. Zoom fit best, and you can actually drag this. If you grab it on the red circle, you can move it wherever you'd like it to sit. I am going to just try to keep it about lined up, but I need it far enough over there that it doesn't get in the way of any of those words. So about right there is fine. Okay, it is similar to the front, so we're going to start off the same way. Point, grab this, from B, come straight over. We're going to start with the waist. Angle 0, length. Alright, so this is the waist circumference. Actually, it's going to be the arc. Waist, arc, back, divided by 2. Okay. And again, I'm just going to call that waist with a capital B, so I know that's the back waist. It will not let you label a point the same as something on the other one, so you need it to be waist B or waist something. There we go. Alright, from there we're going to come up to below bust. Angle is 90, length, below, actually it's lower, low bust. So waist back, low bust to waist back, okay? Okay, and then let's come straight to the right for our circumference. Angle is 0, length, low bust, arc back, divided by 2. Okay, and I can call that below bust back or low bust back, whatever you want to call that is fine. Start at the waist, come up again. We're going to do the bust in the back, so 90 degrees. Length is bust, arc back, divided by 2. Okay, now we need the circumference there. Straight to the right. Angle is 0. The length is the bust, arc back, divided by 2. And that last one I just realized I put the arc for this measurement, but really I need the bust to waist back. There we go, so I'm just fixing that point. Thought that looked a little tall. Alright, this one, let's just go ahead and call that bust back. There we go. Alright, now let's come up to above bust. 90 degrees. Length. And this is high bust to waist back. High bust to waist back. There we go. Okay. Now we need the circumference, so grab that, come straight to the right. Angle is 0. Length. High bust, arc back, divided by 2. Okay, there we go. We'll keep working our way up the pattern. So at the waist, go all the way up to the neck and the back this time, so 90 degrees. type in neck. So neck back to waist back. Okay, okay. All right, now we'll come over the neck width, straight to the right. The length needs to be our neck width divided by 2. Okay, angle is 0. Okay, all right, we will go ahead and square that off again. So this squaring off tool, grab that and down to the waist. Then start at that new bottom point straight up to the shoulder. So our angle should be 90. The length. So this is actually the neck side to waist back. Okay, okay. And if you notice, this is a much shorter distance than it was on the front because your neck does tend to sit towards the front. So this will help curve the pattern around so that your neck's in the correct position. Next, we need the shoulder. So grab this point along a line, start at the side neck squared off, come over to the waist, and we want that to be our shoulder. Ooh, I typed that in the wrong spot, didn't I? In the search bar, shoulder, shoulder length, okay. Okay, and here that is. From there we will come straight up 90 degrees. The length needs to be our shoulder tip to waist side back. Okay, okay. Now we're going to start adding the darts, and on the back it's a little different because the back is actually curved along the spine differently. So this isn't necessarily a perfectly straight line on the back. I am going to take out, and depending on what pattern making you use and the type of person you're fitting for, this might vary slightly. You can just add a back dart to bring this in the back for your shoulder curve. I add one to the center seam and an actual dart here, so I take a little out of the center seam and the dart. That's the way that my body curves. Your body might not need this center adjustment in the back, so I will show you how to do that with or without. So I'm going to start with the center adjustment so that I can change this for different people. So I'm going to do this point at distance along line, and I'm going to go from B to the waist. And here I'm going to do, I think it was the last one on here. What is this one called? It is, let me just type in back and see if it will show up. I can't remember what it's called. I need the indent in my waist back, divided by 2. And then I'm going to hit OK. OK. So this is how much I need to take out the back in general. I don't want to take all of it from here. I want half of it to be in a dart. So I'm actually going to divide that by 4, okay? So now I am going to curve that out from this. Again, I know that my body needs this to follow the curve of my back, just from experience fitting patterns on myself. There are a lot of people that do need this. Some people don't. This is more like if your shoulder blades kind of extrude a little in the back and you need to come back in, this might be helpful. It just fits different people differently. Anyway, so we're going to do this so that you can take it out if you have to, but it's there if you need it. From there, we're now going to create a dart off of this portion of the back, an actual dart. So this will just get eased in the seam. I'm not going to finish that quite yet, almost. So for my dart in the back, I want this to come up to my below bust line, and I want it to be halfway across to fit the curve of my back really nice. So I'm going to grab this tool, the midway, start at B2, go across to the bust, and just hit OK. And then I'm going to square that off with the waist. So this squaring off tool, grab that center point and drag it down to the waist so that the point lands on the waist. And that's where I am going to begin this dart. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see better. Okay, grab this point at distance along line, start at B13 and come out to the waist. This is going to be a little complicated, but in the future it will totally pay off when I can adjust this pattern like crazy for anything I want to make off of it. Alright, here we go. F of X for the length. We need that indent on the back, so indent waist back. but I'm going to put that in parentheses because we're working on half of the pattern, so I only need half of it, divided by 2. Now I need to subtract this portion that I already took out of that. So length of lines, B11 to B. Now, so that's the total distance left that I need to take out of this side of the pattern. But I want the dart to be on both sides of that, possibly. So I'm going to take this whole thing in parentheses now, divided by 2. And I'm going to hit OK. OK. So this is the one side of my dart. Now I'm going to do the dart the other direction, so grab that point again, grab here, go to the waist. I'm going to do it slightly different so that I can adjust the pattern and everything will adjust. F of x, I want that indent again, indent waist back, again divided by 2. Okay, now I'm going to say minus the length of line is B to B11. Oop, wrong one. Minus B13 to B14. Okay, okay. I know that's a lot to put that in there, but what happens is that if I decide I don't want this here, and I come into the pattern, I can just type in 0 and hit enter. And the rest of this adjusts. Oop, 1 second, let me do it. Indent waist back divided by 4. Let's see, if I really, it's probably not going to let me point in 0. Let's put 0.001. Okay, so now this all of a sudden got way bigger. I'm going to undo that. If you aren't aware, if you go over here, there is an undo option. Okay, so I could also, I like my darts to angle inside on the back. So if I grab this point, instead of all of that length, I could just type in 0. Oh no, it won't let me do 0, so 0.01, 001, enter. And now my whole dart is angling to the left, how I like it to sit. Right, I can hit undo, and that goes back in. But as you can see, it makes it really adjustable depending on what I want to do later on in this pattern, which is great. I can even move where this is sitting. If I want it to line up with a different dart, if I'm attaching this to a bodice, I can do all that at that point. Alright, I'm going to hit save so I don't lose anything. Alright, there's one more thing we have to add in. Since we are taking all of this out to create this dart, to create this curve in the back, we have to add length back into the waist, because this is how much room it actually takes to get through the waist, and now we're subtracting all of that. So just grab this point from the waist, come straight to the right. The length, angle is going to be 0, and the length is going to be that indent waist back divided by 2. Okay, okay. And I'm just going to move things around so I know which point is which. Okay, so now this is actually the outside of our waist. So we are going to make the actual dart now. Go to Operations. This True Darts, bottom right. This is the inner back. Grab that out to the new outer back. Bottom left of the dart, top of the dart, bottom right of the dart. And that creates the dart for us. This is super confusing, and there's no way I'm going to click the right number point label when I make my point, so I'm going to drag stuff around. If I click on it and the dart disappears, that is not a number I want. If I click on it and the dart disappears, that's the one I have to click to get my true dart. So I'm going to drag those out of the way. The rest of these numbers I'm going to stack so I don't accidentally click them. I don't need those anymore. And I will just put those either right above or below those darts. Actually, let's go ahead and just move these up a little. There we go. Alright, I'm going to draw some lines to connect all this so I can visualize it a little better. Go to line. We're going to connect these points from B14 down to 17, up to 12. We're just outlining the dart right now. And there we go. Alright, I'm also going to get rid of these two because this is my new waistline. Okay. Now I'm going to curve out this portion of the back. I'm going to say curve. I have to do it in a counterclockwise motion. So curve tool, which uses points, click that. My new bottom, click once, click again, end there. Really nice curve. All right, let's save that. We are going to start working on the shoulder curve for the back, and then we'll do, or the shoulder dart, then we'll do the arm curve and the back curve, and then we can move on to the arms. All right, or the sleeves. So for this, we have to do a couple things here. First off, on point, go ahead and grab point at distance and angle. Shoulder down to the side. Oop, that's not what I wanted. I want to connect these two lines. There we go. And then point. The distance along that line needs to be the shoulder length. Okay. Okay. And actually, those are just about the same. So beautifully done. Okay. I'm going to move this down so I don't accidentally click it. From here, we're going to find the center point, so this midline. Start on the inside, go to the outside, hit enter. That way, if I want to move it closer to the neck, I can. Just depending on the shape of the person's shoulder, I might need to move it in or out. I think it's easier to move it in. All right, from there, we are going to go halfway between the neck and the armpit. Neck and armpit. Okay. A typical shoulder dart's about 3 inches. I tend to think it's about halfway through, though, is where I kind of bend over, and I think most people bend about halfway through their neck and armpit, so that's why I like to do halfway. Again, you can adjust all of this, which is the beauty of it. Alright, so I'm going to square that off. There we go. Alright, so now this point at distance along line. Start from the center and come out to the shoulder. F of X, this is going to be the indent on the neck, indent neck back. And we only need half of it because this is the total neck indentation and I want half of it on each side of the neck. Hit OK, OK, and I actually like this to be at an angle out, so I'm not going to divide that in half and do it on each side. I'm just going to leave it as is, and this is how I'm going to make my dart. So now go to Operations, True Darts, outside shoulder, or I guess neck side of the shoulder, outside of the shoulder, inside of the dart, down to the bottom of the dart, outside of the dart, and there we go. Again, I'm going to find these points that I actually need and get them up here, move my other points out of the way. Maybe I'll move that round shoulder one out of the way while I'm at it. I'm going to grab my line tool and just connect all of those lines real quick so that I end up clicking the right stuff and can visualize this a little better. There we go. Okay. The next thing that we need to do is we need to add distance back on to this shoulder because currently the next thing we'll do is the neck curve. So this we have taken out of the shoulder, but the shoulder does need to be this length. So what we need to do is add this length back into the shoulder, and we're going to do it on the neck side because that neck indent is where the neck is smaller in the back than in the front. So we need to know this distance that we've taken out. So do this line and just draw between 24 to 25 so that we know exactly how long that is. Go back to point. We're going to do point at distance along line. Start at B24, so the dart off to the shoulder. And the length of this, if you hit F of X, is going to be the length of that line. So length of line, B24, so B8 to 24. Okay? Ooh, keep that up. Plus the length of that line, which is B24 to 25. Hit OK. Okay, and now it's at the same angle as that line because we used that line to start it, but this is how far the neck needs to actually come in. If you'd like, you can connect those lines now if that helps you visualize what's going on. Alright, let's go ahead and curve out this neck. So point, we are just going to square this off. So start at the top, down to the bottom of the neck, curve. We need to go this direction. So that 4 point, click once here, twice at that squared off point, and once at the top. and that is my neck curve. I'm going to save that. Last but not least, let's do the armhole curve. So I want my back armhole to actually come 90 degrees off of that line right there. So on point, grab this 90 degrees tool. It's point along perpendicular. Grab it B19 and then connect it to B25. The length of this, I want to be the length of that. So f of x, and the length of line is B25 to B22. 22 to 25, hit OK, hit OK. There we go. That's the start of our arm curve. Now I need to figure out how high this is coming up on this side. So I'm going to zoom out just a touch. And similar to the other side, we need to draw a line from the top of this curve, because I need to know how long that is. So we're going to make a line up from the bust line up. So first we need to find out our new outside. How long is that to the bust line, or to, actually let's go all the way up to the above bust, we might as well. I'm going to grab that connecting line, go all the way up, okay? Alright, now point along the line, and actually I want a straight point up at this point. And that's going to be 90 degrees, and the length of that will be, I need the side, so armpit to waist side minus that line. So length of line B4 to B16. Okay? Okay. There we go. So this is where the armpit needs to come into. Okay. So now I also need to find out how far in this goes, because we measured across our back to see how far in our armpit comes here. Okay, so I am going to do one of these midlines, and I'm going to go, I want it to be further down than that. So let's say I don't need a lot further, divided by 4. Even that is fine. Okay, so from that point, we need to come straight to the right. The length is, let's see if it says back. No, that's armfold to armfold, my apologies. Armfold to armfold is on the back, divided by 2. Okay. The angle is going to be 0. Okay. Alright, and this is how far in it needs to come. So this really needs to be shorter. Let's go ahead and have that divided by 2. There we go. And actually I want that even a little bit shorter. That looks better. I need to try to curve this out as nicely as I can to this line. And I really want to keep this at 90 degrees right at the beginning. So I might have to adjust here and there just to make that look nicer. And that's okay. This is all about doing little adjustments here and there. Alright, so now we need to figure out this curve. I'm going to grab my point. We're going to do point and point from X and Y, square off the armfold to armfold with the armpit waist height. And then we're going to go halfway between those points and halfway between those points. So this halfway point, halfway, just hit enter or OK. Same thing the other direction, OK. And we're going to create that curve. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So outside, that middle point, outside. If you want it curved in further, again, everyone's going to be slightly different. You can delete that. You can go outside, middle, bottom, corner, and then outside, and that'll curve it a little more for you if you would like more curve in the back of this. I like a little bit less curve because I can always add more curve in when I'm doing a fitting, but I can't add fabric back if I've already cut it out. Okay, now we need to curve this back up to here just a little bit. So I'm going to square those off from each other. And what I'm actually going to do is just connect these two lines. It's not going to be a 90-degree angle like I want it, but that is a nice little armhole curve, and I am happy with that, so I'll take it. Let's go ahead and add the waist to high hip measurement so that it's on here for actual patterns we want to make off of this. Grab point at distance and angle. Start at the actual waist, not the new waist. The actual waist, come down. The length is going to be high hip, waist to high hip back. Okay, angle is 270. Okay. And then we're going to come to the right. The angle is 0. The length is the high hip arc back divided by 2. Okay, okay, there we go. I'm going to save this. Let's get started on the sleeves. New pattern piece. Okay, zoom fit best. There we go. Let's try that again. All right. Okay, so there's a couple things we need to do for the sleeve. We need to find out how long these lines are both ways in the back, and we need to figure out how long this curve is in the front. We are going to go ahead and measure out both of those. So go ahead and go to the bodice front. We'll start there. And we already have this line, but I want to connect the whole thing. So line, just to make it easy on myself, from there up to the shoulder, and then from there to the armpit. That way I have both of those. Let's go to the back. I'm going to do a very similar thing. We're just going to use this corner point, corner to the top, corner out. Okay, go back to the sleeve. I'm going to zoom out so I can see both of those. Okay. Now, to start, we need the length of the sleeve. So we are going to go down from point. This is the shoulder head, basically, straight down. The angle is 270, and the length is going to, let's type wrist, shoulder tip to wrist. Okay? Okay. Now, we need from the shoulder tip to the elbow, so we're going to just do a point along that line. We're going to type in elbow, shoulder tip to elbow. Okay? This part's a little bit confusing, but I will try to go slow and make it make sense. We need all of those lines divided by 4 first, because we need to go down and out enough to fit inside the 4 of those lines, basically. So I'm going to do a point along the line, and we're just going to go from the shoulder tip down to the elbow. And in f of x, the length of lines, I'm going to do a parentheses, and then I'm going to go to this corner one, A21, and I want that line and this line, so A21 to shoulder, plus A21 to armpit, plus I want the B length one, so we're going to start at the corner, B32, B32, so B32 to B29, plus 32 to 19, and parentheses divided by 4. Hit OK, hit OK. Now that's not the actual point we need. It'll just make the math a lot less confusing in the next couple parts. So now, every time I've done this works out. Hopefully it works out for you this way. The shoulder or the upper arm circumference is longer than a quarter of that. So we need to find out the difference of that so we can raise this the difference so that we don't lose anything. So we need to draw another point from C down to the elbow. But instead of redoing all that math, hit f of x, and we're going to do upper arm circumference. I like to do parentheses just to keep my math neat, divided by 2, okay, minus the length of line C to C3. Okay? Okay. So I need to know how long that line is. So then, from C3, I need to go up that far. And actually, what I'm going to do, click on that, Options. I'm just going to go the other direction. Instead of starting at C, we're going to start at C3. So first point's going to be C3, and it's going to end at C. So it'll go that way now. There we go. That's what I want. So this is the bottom of that arm curve. Okay, now I need to go out length of line, C to C3, plus this amount that we subtracted, plus C4 to C3. Okay, angle's 180. Okay, and if we did this right, this should be exactly the upper arm measurement. So I'm going to just double check it off of this. We'll delete it in a second. Angle's 180, length, upper arm circumference divided by 2. Okay, okay, and it is. So it worked. I'm going to go ahead and delete that line so I don't get confused. And I'm going to mirror this line to the other side. So starting at C4, I'm going to go to the right. The angle is 0, the length. So I need this to be C4 to C5. Length of line, C5. Okay, okay. There we go. So we can make both sides of the sleeve at the same time. Let's go ahead and create the sleeve head. I'm going to do a point along the line, and I'm going to drag this to the left just a little, just so I can see this A-line point. Alright, we'll do the front on that side. So grab from the center out to the end, and we're going to do this line divided by 2. So A21 to the shoulder. Length of line, A21 to shoulder, divided by 2. Okay? Okay. And then the other side we're going to do the back. So 32 to 19 divided by 2. Length of line, be 32 to 19 divided by 2. Okay. Okay, I'm going to square those out on both sides. Square that out. Square that out. I'm going to draw my curve. I got to go this direction. We have to go clockwise. So grab my 4-point curve. Outside, inside, tap, inside. Same thing. Tap, outside, down, outside. And there is our sleeve head. Now we need to make sure that there's actually enough room here, because this is probably about an inch short on each side, and we don't ever want this to be exactly on the arm anyways. This should curve out at the arm level. So what we're going to do is double check these values and add additional. So we just have to do a point coming straight out from the edge of the arm. The angle is going to be 180, and the length of that, I'm trying to put this so I can see all these points. We are going to do some lengths of lines and curves. So we need basically this curve and that curve have to be the length of that line plus that curve plus that line plus that curve. So we're going to start with the lengths of lines. I'm going to put a parentheses because it's all of those divided by 2. Alright, so the first one is shoulder to A20, so I'm going to type in shoulder to A20 plus B19 to B31. Oop, wrong spot. Plus B19 to B31. Plus, so those are the 2 straight lines. Now we need the 2 curves. Length of curve. This is A20 to armpit. Let's just type in armpit. Plus, this one is B29 to B31. So B31. Whoop, wrong spot again. There we go. So all of that divided by 2. Okay? So now I need that length minus this line, because that line's already there. So minus length of line, C4 to C5. Okay. I'm going to hit OK. Beautiful. And yeah, that came out about 2 inches. All right, if you don't like how much further that's coming out wide instead of down, all you want to do is on that point, I'm going to take this midpoint, divide it by 2, okay? And then I'm going to come down that same length. So this, I'll come from C4 to C2, and we'll do that half point, C5 to C12. So length of line, C5 to C12. Okay, okay. Move that out of the way. And then you can basically redo your curve. So we would come out from there. And I want to block off this curve as well. Out, inner, up, over. And that way you have a taller sleeve or a wider sleeve. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So it's going to be just this length exactly. So C6 over, this needs to be 0 degrees. So it's C5 to C11. We want it to be that same line. Length of lines, C5 to C11. Okay, okay. We're going to do the same thing. We'll just take it in half. Same as the other one. Okay. And this is already that distance, so we just have to square it all out. Square that out. Square the curve line out. Draw a new curve. I'm going to leave both curves up there. That way I have the option to use either one, but I just realized I did this curve wrong. I don't want that squared off of that. I want this squared off of this point. There we go. Let's fix that curve. So depending on different clothes, I will want either a wider sleeve or a longer sleeve, and that's okay. So this way I have either option. Then I'm just going to get my widths for my shoulder and my elbow and my wrist. So straight to the left, angle 180, length, measurements, elbow, divided by 2, okay, okay. Same thing at the wrist, angle 180, length, wrist, divided by 2, okay, okay. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, but I'm just going to use these lines. 0, the length will be length of line, C20. Okay, okay. And this one will be 0 degrees, and the length of C21. And there we have it, a sleeve. So at this point, I'm just going to save it. We don't need to connect any of the lines on the sleeve, and we don't need to add anything to a pattern, because this technically is not an actual pattern. This is a bodice black that we can create patterns off of. So I will show you how to make some patterns off of this. There's different things we'll want to do to it, and how to turn it into a pattern that we can sew. But this is officially our basic bodice with side dart black with a sleeve. I hope you're proud of yourself, because this was a ton of work, but you did it, so pat yourself on the back. Make sure you hit that like button, and make sure you subscribe so that you can see more things you can do with these patterns and create off of this by